This janitor met a serial life-taker and didn't even know it. Richard Gaines just wanted to mop the floors until he opened the wrong door. What he saw inside would haunt him for life and inspire one of America's most twisted life-takers. Stick around, because the chilling words Arthur Bellamy whispered that night will make you question every stranger you've ever trusted. He was just a janitor at the time, a man whose name meant little to the world but would carry the weight of fate for another soul. Richard Gaines had taken the night shift at a psychiatric hospital in New Hampshire because the hours paid more and the silence made sense to a man whose own thoughts were too loud during the day. He had no idea that behind one of those cold steel doors, polishing the same hallway floor he'd mopped for years, he'd come face to face with someone the world would later fear as a myth. On that particular night, the storm outside roared against the ancient glass like an angry animal. He remembered his cart squeaking as he passed room 8B. Inside, nothing but dim light and shadow. But then came a sound. Not a scream, not a voice, but something like a growl mixed with breathing. A metallic click, and silence again. Richard pushed the door open without knocking, against protocol, against instinct. There sat a man cross-legged on the tile, his back to the wall, head tilted sideways like a crow studying a carcass. The man slowly looked up, and Richard noticed his eyes didn't move like human eyes. They glided, like oil over water. The file on the clipboard said nothing significant. Name, Arthur Bellamy, held for observation after an incident involving animal cruelty and ritual behavior. Richard would never forget that man's mouth curling into a smile so wide it looked dislocated. "You have the hands of someone who hides things," Arthur whispered. And then just like that, he lay back down, turning toward the wall. What Richard didn't know that night, what the world wouldn't discover until a decade later, was that Arthur Bellamy would become known as the puppeteer, a man who gutted victims and suspended their organs with fishing wire to mimic marionettes in his basement. He had been released 2 months after that stormy night, deemed safe under state supervision. Richard never saw him again, but when his face showed up on CNN, smeared with blood and smiling into the lens of a gas station camera, Richard dropped the plate he was washing and cut his foot on the ceramic. Bellamy had thanked an angel in New Hampshire for reminding him to be patient with his work. The town would never forget who that was meant for. 3 states away, 20 years before the FBI ever linked a string of disappearances, a woman named Elise Ramos was just trying to keep her life afloat. Working late shifts as a rideshare driver in Portland, Maine, Elise had seen her fair share of strange passengers, drunks, heartbreakers, crying brides-to-be, but nothing could prepare her for the man who entered her backseat on October 9, 2013. He wore a funeral suit and carried a large envelope, the kind that looked thick with papers or maybe something else. Elise noticed he never took his gloves off. She asked where he was headed, and he gave her a name, Colfax Lane, but no number, just a mile marker. That wasn't strange on its own. Rural towns had odd addresses. As they drove into the darkness, the man didn't speak much. He asked only one question, and he asked it twice. "Do you know what it feels like to hold your own breath underwater?" Elise laughed the first time. She didn't the second. Her gut tightened. She noticed his eyes didn't blink, but she kept driving. The mile marker came. There was no house, just woods. The man insisted this was correct and asked if he could step out and check something. Elise said no. She locked the doors with a button. And then, in one motion, he slammed the envelope against the glass. It burst open, not with paper, but with photographs. Elise caught a glimpse of black and white prints, photos that showed something no sane camera should have captured. A woman bound to a chair, mouth open mid-scream, with numbers written in blood on her chest. Elise hit the gas before he could react, and the man screamed with laughter behind her. She drove to a sheriff's outpost. By the time they returned to the site, he was gone. The photos too, but Elise gave a description. Years later, when agents arrested Lucas Danner, known in national headlines as the Shroud Collector, they found inside his barn 49 black and white photographs, each one numbered, each a victim, each sealed inside protective plastic. One was marked 51. Blank. Elise believes that was meant to be her. The FBI told her she was likely the only known survivor. She doesn't drive anymore. Not at night. Not ever. Then there was Trevor Danes, a high school dropout from Topeka who, by all accounts, should have died on June 14, 2007. He had taken a dare from his cousin to sneak into an abandoned apartment complex slated for demolition. Urban legends called it the Gallo Building, and locals said strange things happened there. Lights that flickered without power, the scent of rotting lilies, the sound of metal dragging at night. Trevor didn't believe any of it. He was 17 and stupid. He climbed through a broken window and started filming with his phone, narrating like a YouTube star. Inside, he found mold, rats, and broken furniture. But he also found something he didn't expect: a campfire set up in the center of a bedroom, fresh ashes, a sleeping bag, and photographs, hundreds, pinned to the walls, to the ceiling, to the floor, all of them taken through windows. Every picture was of a person sleeping, some children, some elderly, some couples mid-embrace. None of them seemed to know they'd been watched. Then he saw one with his cousin in it, taken just 2 days ago. In their own house, Trevor ran. He didn't scream, didn't breathe. He ran so hard he cracked his shin on the frame and crawled out through broken glass. He never told anyone what he saw, until the fires. 3 weeks later, for homes burned down in Topeka. No suspects, but survivors reported seeing a man standing just beyond the tree line, wearing a mask made of newspaper. He never moved, just watched. Police dismissed it as trauma-induced hallucination. But Trevor knew better. Years passed, and then, in 2019, a man named Curtis Walden was arrested in Nebraska, found with 114 photos taped to the inside of his trailer. They called him the Sleeper. All victims had been burned in their homes. Not one person survived, except Trevor. In Austin, Texas, the college scene has always been vibrant, full of music and beer and bad decisions. For Rachel Portman, a third-year psychology student, one bad decision almost became her final chapter. It was spring break. She'd chosen to stay back and study. One night, while heading back from the campus library, she realized too late that her car battery was dead. Her phone too. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for one other car. Its lights turned on. A man rolled down the window and asked if she needed help. He looked like someone's dad, balding with glasses, polo shirt. He even had a lanyard that said, "Maintenance, campus property." She hesitated but agreed. He offered to drive her to the nearest gas station for jumper cables. She stepped into his car. The moment the doors locked, she noticed all the dashboard icons had been tampered with, scratched out, black tape over the glove box. Her heart began to race. She made up a lie about her boyfriend being a cop and needing to know where she was. The man didn't respond. He just started laughing, quietly, then more deeply. Rachel unbuckled and said she needed to throw up. When he slowed near a stop sign, she opened the door and bolted into a Walgreens parking lot. She never saw the man's face again, but she did see him years later on television. His name was Trevor Melrose, a janitor by day, who had posed as everything from a rideshare driver to a charity worker to lure women into his car. They found the bodies of 7 girls buried behind his childhood home, each with a rubber band around the wrist and a maintenance badge pinned to their clothes. Rachel still has dreams where she's locked in that car, and she can hear the laugh but can't find the door handle. In the deep woods of Oregon, on the way to the Rogue River, there exists a dirt road known by hikers as Dead Mile. No signs, no pavement, just a whisper of a path through pines and fog. In 1995, 2 brothers, Jake and Aaron Wilkins, decided to explore it during a camping trip. They pitched a tent just off the trail and joked about ghosts and bears. But sometime around 2 a.m., Aaron woke up to the sound of someone whistling. Not a bird, not an animal, a human whistle. "Camptown races," Jake would later say. They peeked outside. No one, but fresh footprints circled the tent. They packed and left by sunrise. Later, after returning home, they discovered a film roll in one of their bags. They hadn't brought a camera. When developed, the pictures were all of them, sleeping, eating, staring into the fire. None of them taken by either brother. The final photo was of them from behind, walking away from the tent at dawn. The image had been captured from the trees. 15 years later, a hiker disappeared on the same trail. Then another, then 3 more. All their phones found with similar photos. Finally, authorities arrested Daryl Quinn, a Forest Service volunteer who had been fired in 1998 for inappropriate surveillance. Inside his cabin, they found walls lined with photos, including one of Jake and Aaron from 1995. He had labeled it favorites. He died in custody before trial, but the camera with their photo had vanished. Jake refuses to hike ever again. There's a pattern that becomes clear only when it's too late, that horror rarely announces itself with a scream. It comes softly, with a smile, a helping hand, or the turn of a key. Serial killers do not always wear masks or carry chainsaws. Sometimes they wear uniforms, offer you rides, walk their dogs past your house. Sometimes you talk to them in line at the grocery store and never know. The randomness is what truly scars, because evil, the real kind, doesn't look the way we expect. It smiles wider, it watches longer, and sometimes it waits for years. Some encounters leave no blood, no police reports, no chase scenes. Some leave only a cold memory, a photo on the news, a detail you didn't notice until it was too late. But when the truth comes, when the face of the man you nearly trusted turns up beside words like the shroud collector, or the puppeteer, or the sleeper, it changes everything. Not just because you survived, but because you didn't even know you were in danger. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying story of all. Have you ever felt something was off about someone you met? Like your instincts were screaming, but you smiled anyway. Which of these encounters shook you the most? Was it the janitor who met a legend in the making? The girl who ran from a laugh she still hears in her sleep? Or the campers watched from the shadows? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have seen the signs, or would you have trusted the wrong face too? Let us know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes survival stories are written by people who never even knew they were in danger.